On the night of November 12, 1970, in the span of roughly 12 hours, somewhere between 300,000 and 500,000 people died. Not over a war, not over a plague spreading slowly through a population. In a single night, from a single storm, in a region of the world most people outside South Asia had never heard of and still haven't. It's one of the strongest candidates historians point to when they try to answer a genuinely uncomfortable question. What was the single deadliest day in recorded human history? And the answer isn't what most people guess. It's not a famous battle. It's not a bomb. It's a cyclone that most of the world has almost completely forgotten. Before we get to that night, it's worth walking through the events people usually assume hold this record, because the assumptions themselves reveal something interesting about how we remember mass death. Ask most people to guess the deadliest single day in history, and you'll typically hear one of three answers: the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, the first day of the Battle of the Somme, or a major earthquake. All three killed a staggering number of people. None of them, it turns out, likely holds the actual record. Start with Hiroshima, August 6, 1945. Somewhere between 70 and 80,000 people died on the day of the bombing itself, with tens of thousands more dying in the following days, weeks, and years from radiation and injuries. It's an almost incomprehensibly horrific single event, the first use of a nuclear weapon in human conflict. But in terms of pure single-day death toll, it doesn't top the list. The first day of the Battle of the Somme, July 1, 1916, is frequently cited as the bloodiest single day in British military history specifically, with roughly 19,000 British soldiers killed and tens of thousands more wounded within hours. It's a staggering, horrifying number for one army on one day. But even factoring in German casualties from that same day, it still falls well short of six figures. Earthquakes get mentioned too, and for good reason. The 1976 Tangshan earthquake in China killed an estimated 240,000 people, with some estimates running considerably higher, striking a densely populated industrial city with almost no warning in the middle of the night. It's genuinely one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history. But even this staggering number is likely surpassed by the event we opened with. So let's go back to November 1970, to what's now known as the Bola cyclone, and understand exactly why it became so catastrophically deadly. The storm formed in the Bay of Bengal and made landfall in what was then East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, an area characterized by low-lying river deltas, dense coastal population, and critically, almost no early warning infrastructure. The cyclone brought sustained winds estimated at around 115 miles per hour, but wind speed alone wasn't what made this storm so lethal. It was the storm surge. A storm surge is essentially a wall of ocean water pushed inland by a storm's wind and pressure system. And in the case of Bola, that surge reached heights estimated at over 30 feet in some coastal areas. To put that into perspective, that's roughly the height of a three-story building, moving inland as a wall of seawater at night, across a low-lying delta region where entire communities lived at or barely above sea level, with essentially no elevated ground to retreat to. The geography here matters enormously because it explains why the death toll became so extreme. The Ganges-Brahmaputra Delta, where the storm made landfall, is one of the most densely populated and lowest-lying river delta systems on Earth. Millions of people lived on small offshore islands and coastal floodplains, farming and fishing communities built directly on land that sits barely above the waterline during normal conditions. When a 30-foot wall of water moved through that terrain in darkness, there was, in the most literal sense, nowhere for people to go. Compounding the disaster further was the almost complete absence of an effective early warning system. Meteorological forecasting technology existed, and warnings were issued, but the communication infrastructure needed to actually get that information to millions of people in remote coastal and island communities essentially didn't exist. Many residents received no meaningful warning at all before the surge arrived. Some accounts describe families waking up already partially submerged, with only minutes, sometimes seconds, to react. The death toll estimates vary considerably depending on the source, ranging from roughly 300,000 on the more conservative end to as high as 500,000 in some assessments, and that variation itself tells you something about the scale of the chaos. In a disaster this catastrophic, In a region with the infrastructure that existed at the time, an accurate, complete count of the dead may simply never be possible. Entire island communities were wiped out with such thoroughness that in some cases, there was nobody left to report exactly how many people had been there in the first place. The humanitarian catastrophe didn't end when the water receded either. Survivors faced a devastated agricultural region, contaminated water supplies, destroyed housing, and a public health crisis involving disease outbreaks in the storm's aftermath, compounding the death toll further in the weeks that followed, though the initial night of the storm itself accounts for the overwhelming majority of deaths. This disaster also carries a significant historical weight beyond the death toll itself. The perceived slow and inadequate response from the Pakistani central government, located far away in West Pakistan, to a catastrophe affecting East Pakistan's population became a significant point of political tension. Some historians point to the government's handling of the Bola cyclone aftermath as one of several contributing factors that fueled growing political unrest that would eventually contribute to the Bangladesh Liberation War and the region's independence just months later, making this a storm whose consequences extended into geopolitical history well beyond its immediate, staggering human cost. So why doesn't this event occupy the same space in global memory as Hiroshima or the Somme? Part of the answer likely comes down to where it happened and who it happened to. Natural disasters in densely populated but historically under-resourced regions have, across the 20th century, consistently received less sustained international media attention and cultural memory than comparably deadly events involving wealthier nations or major military conflicts. It's an uncomfortable pattern, but a well-documented one. The scale of a tragedy and the scale of the world's collective memory of that tragedy don't always match up. What makes an honest answer to the deadliest day in human history so difficult isn't just a lack of data, it's the sheer diversity of ways a single day can turn catastrophic. Military conflict, nuclear weaponry, earthquakes, and storm surges each kill through entirely different mechanisms, at entirely different speeds, leaving behind entirely different kinds of evidence and record-keeping. Comparing them accurately means comparing tragedies that, in some cases, killed people almost instantly, and in other cases, unfolded over agonizing hours in the dark. What the Bola cyclone ultimately represents, beyond its likely claim to this grim record, is a reminder that the deadliest events in human history aren't always the ones we're taught about, memorialized for, or shown in documentaries with dramatic music. Sometimes the single worst day in recorded human history is a storm most people have never heard of, striking a delta most people couldn't find on a map, killing hundreds of thousands of people in the span of a single night, and then largely disappearing from the world's collective memory almost as quickly as the floodwaters themselves receded.